Son, I'm not mad, just disappointed. This was the prevailing mindset my dad would say to me whenever I didn't live up to my potential, or at least his expectations. I hold Survivor in high regard and know it can often deliver some really great entertainment every year, but after so many seasons, there are times where the show just doesn't live up to its potential, or at least my expectations. Some would say Survivor seasons are like pizza. Even when it's bad, it's still pretty good. But even then, there are depressing pizzas out there, least of all on Survivor, and while there are upsides to all 5 of the seasons in this video, I still think they're depressing in some ways, not living up to what I had hoped. Internet, here are my top 5 most depressing Survivor seasons. At number 5, I have one of my least favorite seasons, one where I derive some of the least pleasure watching it or rewatching it, and that is season 22, Redemption Island. You know, the one where Rob and Russell come back for the umpteenth time as captains of their tribes, and a new safety net twist is put in place to protect them in case they get voted out right away. Which, by the way, is what happens. The build rivalry that spawned this season from the ashes of the Heroes vs. Villains reunion where Rob taunted Russell to come back and kick his ass all over again. These two mafiosos showed up on the beaches of Nicaragua to duke it out, and they pretty much don't interact at all the entire season. Russell's tribe throws a challenge to vote him out by episode 3, and Rob doesn't even react to it. Are you kidding me? On top of that, there's very simple groupthink strategy that prevails for the dominant Orange tribe, Rob's tribe, where they all agree to listen to whatever Rob says at every turn. Even Philip, Rob's initial foil, gets in line after a few episodes and decides to march to the beat of his drum. Half the cast is invisible or unlikable, the other half are hopeless or brainless, and then there's just Rob in the thick of it, controlling everything. And don't get me wrong, I like Rob enough, but not enough to watch him dominate for 14 episodes with no legitimate pushback. At least in some seasons with dominant winners, they caught some serious heat, like Tom and Palau or Tony and Cagayan, but that was never the case with Rob. Between the steamroll, the lack of suspense, the disappointing revenge arc that was Matt on Redemption Island all season, the pretty dreary location, as well as the awkward argument about racism between Philip and Steve, I'll watch this season to lose faith in the show.
There's really only one logical decision here. Well, one person doesn't deserve it, so we can cut him off. The other one thanked somebody for doing it all. Who'd she thank? The guy sitting in the middle. He did everything. He controlled your minds, he controlled what you did, he controlled your thoughts. You all bought it, and one by one, all of you were blindsided. There's a guy sitting over there that just played the best strategic game this game has ever seen. And it's pretty damn easy to tell you who deserves to get your vote tonight.
And boy, if that's number 5, then where are we going from here? At number 4, we have the second half all-star season with season 26, Survivor Karamoan, Fans vs. Favorites 2. A season that attempted to recapture the spark and charm of the first Fans vs. Favorites 10 seasons prior, but instead gave us quite the opposite, almost no charm or desire to ever see this twist again. I know some fans will cite the second half of the season as being more fun, and you know, I pretty much agree. I think the Three Amigos tribal is the highlight, but beyond that, everything around it gets ugly and personal and just isn't really my cup of tea. In the pre-merge, we see some terrible, obnoxious strategy where the fans tribe devolves into the cool kids narrative versus the leftovers, and the cool kids get all the screen time to explain how just bad they are at the game. I do appreciate the silver lining in how much Reynolds and Eddie fail, but they overshadow the tribe outside of some other bleak moments, such as Shamar being a menace and then getting medically evacuated for getting sand in his eye, or most of the women on the tribe being completely invisible and irrelevant. There's just no hope here. We then, however, go to the Favorites tribe, which feels like a bad joke. This group right here, I'm sorry to say, this is a 0 upvoted fancast Reddit thread if I ever saw one. Philip is back and hasn't changed at all, to which he antagonizes Brandon, who can't control his anger and blows up on the tribe and is pulled from the game after 5 episodes. Watching Jeff massage Brandon hands as he's about to lose it, this is not the content I signed up for. How he managed to pass the psych evaluation is beyond me, but here we are. Eric, the ice cream scooper, was an original fan on the first Fans vs. Faves season, and you would think that would make his story pretty captivating, but instead it falls flat as he's pretty much not on the season at all. He's barely shown and then is just medically evacuated at the final 5 for a reason that isn't even featured on this season. The show basically just makes up a storyline for why he goes. Brenda, the Black Widow, is also irrelevant up until she gets blindsided, and then it gets deeply personal for her and Dawn that culminates in Teethgate, a moment where Brenda saved Dawn from quitting the show by retrieving her teeth that fell out, only for Dawn to vote Brenda out on Survivor, mind you, only for then Brenda to turn around and humiliate Dawn at the final tribal. The fanbase reacted horribly to this fiasco. It was not a pleasant time in the community, and outside of Malcolm's devilish charm and Cochran's cocky underdog arc, the best I can say is that, well, the season happened.
I should be happy today, but I'm not. I should be really, really happy and content today, but this has been one of the hardest days yet for whatever reason. I feel like I'm in prison right now. I feel like there's just so much time. It's stretched out. I feel like I'm trapped here and it's horrible. I'm miserable here. This is the most beautiful prison I've ever been in my life. These days are killing me. They're absolutely killing me.
And number 3, I have season 39, Island of the Idols. And you know, I think many will have this one as their top spot for this category, but I actually have 2 other seasons ahead of it. As far as this season goes, it doesn't really need much explanation beyond the Dan of it all. The first half doesn't have much of anything to make it a depressing season, but once the merge hits and the ordeal between Kelly and Dan becomes front and center of the drama, and then Kelly gets voted out with 2 idols in her pocket to boot, and then Janet is shunned for sticking up for the women who decided to walk back their sentiments about Dan, it all gets dour really quick. The show tries to kind of brush all of it under the rug in the following episodes, but there's this dark cloud hovering over the season with how ugly the merge was handled. And I don't think it helps much when Dan is unceremoniously removed from the show at the end of the second to last episode for something that we don't even see. It all feels weird and was the first time I was watching a season live where I lost a lot of faith in the producers. That said, there's also the whole Island of the Idols twist that doesn't really do much for me but take up time. Boston Rob and Sandra are back on the show, but it's all really contrived and on rails and doesn't make me miss seasonal themes at all. We also got Janet being taken out by the idol nullifier that Dean won off of a coin flip, which is definitely peak Survivor gameplay, and then Tommy has just this very vanilla generic edit that doesn't really inspire me. Although, yeah, a lot of this is just window dressing because the biggest reason this season is here is how awful the merge situation is and the fallout from that. The last live reunion show as of this video had murmurs of a cast revolt, and Jeff had to sit down with Kelly and apologize to her. And somehow, this is still only my 3rd most depressing season.
Tommy and I made a plan. We're gonna get out Lauren, who I think is the biggest threat. Lauren has a lot of friends. A lot of people like her. You know, she's good. If we get to the final 4, I'm picking you and you're picking me.
Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
My life is on that.
If anybody has a hidden immunity idol and you want to play it, now would be the time to do so.
Jeff?
This is a hidden immunity idol. And this is the idol nullifier.
And number 2, this might be a hot take or maybe just a depressing one, but I have season 8 All-Stars, the first returning player season in the show's history. I have a few reasons for this one being above the previous one, obviously. The first being the moment where Jenna leaves the season to be with her dying mom. It's such an unfortunate situation that kicks the season off on a down note, only made worse when right after this, we see Sue quit because of what happened between her and Rich at one of the immunity challenges where he got naked. The way this entire debacle is presented is pretty awful. How much shaming of Sue went down after she had time to process what happened, and it only furthers to hurt the season when a lot of the players' reputations begin to go south. Fan favorites like Tina, Rudy, and Rob are voted out early, and we see the betrayal of Rob and Lex unfold in the middle that leaves this bitterness lingering in the air going forward. It's not exactly pleasant, to say the least, and it culminates with the most bruised jury in Survivor history, and Boston Rob half whimpering to them for forgiveness. They're all so upset, except Cheyenne, and I always remember Jeff saying he didn't care for All Stars because of how much ego came with the players. And it really feels like that's the prevailing theme of this season. Survivor, all egos. Way too much ego. And maybe I'm taking a modern lens and putting it over an old season, but the gameplay is so disappointing from a lot of this cast. The boot order leaves something to be desired, and the biggest plot points are all negative. Okay, yes, except for maybe one. There's just not a lot of humor, and while it's nice that Rob and Amber found love, it was tough to celebrate amidst the nastiness. Plus, Amber didn't get much credit for her win anyway. If anything, the narrative is always and has always been how much Rob was robbed. For an all-star season, let alone the first of Survivor, it's just not the celebration that you would expect it or want it to be.
This whole thing is making me so sick, okay? This entertainment is coming at a price. What it has cost us, our friendships, our feelings, our pain, our suffering.
Wait, Jerry,
Or entertainment.
give us a big shot of all 18. We are now down to 17 because Jerry left during the break. Well, that's why she left.
And so that leaves us with what I believe is the most depressing season in Survivor history. And I kind of wonder if anyone is unsure which season that is. I'll give you a hint. It was filmed in Thailand. Yep, you nailed it. It's David versus Goliath. I'm kidding, yeah, it's season 5. It's Survivor Thailand. Is anyone shocked? Like, is anyone out there actually legitimately shocked that this is number 1? Was it Grindgate that made this season better? Where Ted and Gandia and the entire tribe basically fell apart from a likability standpoint afterward? Was it the Purple Sukjai tribe and how they all talked about Cheyenne, or how Rob with 2 Bs acted like a man-child? Actually, I would say that Rob's arc is one of the more redeeming parts of the season, but he goes pre-merge, so it's really not much to hang your skateboard on. We get the tribe auction that totally flops, the mutiny twist that flops, the fake merge that flops, the pagonging steamroll boot order where Brian and Clay and Ted run the game, nothing is done to change the status quo. Even Helen's husband at the loved one's visit is like, you need to get Brian out, and she doesn't. And of course, she's super mad at Brian for that. We get the racism controversy between Ted and Clay and Brian and Ken. We get Brian not getting called out ever for his contribution to stirring the pot between Ted and Gandia. Brian is one of the slimiest quote-unquote good faith actors who appears to be helping, but is clearly looking to spin a narrative here. And of course, he wins the season, the used car salesman of it all. The season doesn't try to shy away from being the least likable cast ever. I know Jeff has said that I think this is his least favorite cast of all time. It tonally flips and flops with every player, and it ultimately culminates with an underwhelming finish where the guy in front all season comes out ahead. And along the way, everyone else is worse off for it, including us in the audience. From a meta perspective, I will give it its credit in that it's kind of amusing to see a season of just straight up not likable people run the game, but then I rewatch it and I'm reminded how much easier it is to commentate about that than to actually watch it. And here we are, my most depressing Survivor season. Also, not so fun fact, this was the last season my wife watched when she hopped around watching every season of the show, and boy oh boy did she save her least favorite for last.
You had to be a little surprised that you squeaked this out.
Well, I mean, Clay, he's a very tough competitor, very
No,
likable guy. Very likable guy.
We're not doing this anymore.
And those are my top 5 most depressing Survivor seasons. That being said, I hope you're not too depressed hearing me talk about all of this. Not all video topics are created equal, let's just say. Let me know what you think about my picks and what your top 5 might look like too. A big thanks to my patrons for supporting me and not being mad or disappointed in me after all this. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video for what it's worth. Don't forget to remind yourself that these seasons are exceptions to the rule on your way out, and I will see you in the next one once I read more about Brian shooting a puppy with a bow and arrow. Of course that happened.
16 strangers forced to work together to create a new society while battling the elements and their egos. In the end, only one will remain to claim the $1 million prize. 39 days, 18 people, 1 survivor.